focused to win, striving to reach the top. We expect our athletes to be almost superhuman. So is it as simple as being the best? Or is there more to these elite performers? What is it that sets them apart? What is it that gives them the edge? McLaren doesn't just do cars. At their technology centre west of London, a Formula One effort is being applied to help Britain's top athletes too. With performance across many sports reaching a peak, winning depends on the smallest of margins. Fine-tuning is what McLaren does best, and it's this know-how that Team GB is tapping into.
Many athletes now are monitored every day in their training environment as opposed to being in a lab. And that continual collection of information helps us better understand how the athlete's developing over time. It's really all about data. We talk about the only competitive, sustainable advantage is to learn faster than the opposition. And what technology has given us is a platform to better understand individuals and to better intervene so they can develop much more effectively for their event.
Live measurement of Formula One cars during a race on tyre or engine performance and the driver's physiology means teams can make almost instantaneous decisions about tactics. The technology's closely guarded in motor racing, and McLaren's equally secretive about exactly how they've helped Team GB.
The impact of the work that we do is generally the difference between medaling and not medaling. And it might even be the case of, once you get in the medals, the difference between a gold and a silver.
It's not as clinical as McLaren, but this biomechanics lab in Sheffield is where the ideas of the future are being honed. These PhD students are not dancing, but learning about balance and posture. Professor Steve Hake is helping to build the prototypes of systems to help athletes out in the field as they train. Everything he does depends on measuring an athlete's performance, then feeding that information back straight away, giving them the edge.
We have the boundaries of the allowed and the possible. So the ruling bodies, they say what is allowed, but in terms of physics, just anything is possible as long as the rules of physics allow that. How many strokes per minute does it say? Might be 55 strokes per minute.
32.5 something.
Yeah.
Yes, it looks daft, but believe me, this kind of monitoring is intended to help athletes work out how to optimise their performance.
That's great. Keep going.
Tiny reflectors on my arms and legs mean the 12 infrared cameras around the room can track my movements. An athlete can use this to watch how they position their bodies, how long and how fast their strokes are, how much weight they put on an arm or a leg, and when. But it's out in competition that it matters most. And the key is the rapid development of mobile technology. This makes instantaneous feedback possible right at the poolside. Teams have access to more than 1 million pieces of data on thousands of races by swimmers from over 60 nations, so they can begin to see how they compare with rivals or over the years. At qualifiers in Sheffield last month, the athletes were on edge. This is the second round of the Olympic trials for British swimmers. 37 places have already been filled. There are only 15 left to compete for. So for these swimmers, every 100th of a second really counts. Stacey Tadd has already earned her place at the London Olympics. But she's being watched by her performance team, so they can feed back last-minute tweaks. Professor Hake's monitoring her too, and her rivals.
So what they're looking at here now at Stacey's race is first a look at the video. And so with the video, they can see her technique and they can see the individual strokes going into and out of the turns. With the analysis, what they've done already is they've looked at the analysis and they're looking at the number of strokes per minute, the distance between the strokes and her velocity through the water, and particularly coming into the beginning and ends of the race.
So you weren't aware of them here?
No.
Not here?
Stacey herself seems less interested in the high-tech analysis. Just watching the video tells her the most. Spectators too can be wary of the role technology plays in an athlete's performance.
People like to see in any sport that it's the athlete in front of them that's winning and not some spurious piece of technology. So the world governing body, although they like technology, they want technology because it keeps the sport alive, it can't be the dominant effect.
At Loughborough, and the British Olympic swimming team is now in lockdown. Craig Benson is the world junior champion for a 100-metre breaststroke.
Because that one wasn't, was it? That was just like a push-off.
His coach wants to work on his weak points.
When he qualified for the Olympics, off the start, he came up, he was probably last after the start, so the first 10 to 15 metres of the race, he was one of the slowest, and by the time he got down to 50 metres, he was second fastest. So, you know, obviously if we improve the start to the point where he's one of the best at his start, then he's probably going to be one of the best swimmers in the world.
Today, she and Craig have scientists from the University of Southampton poolside to help. They're measuring his speed through the water and the way he turns, feeding this back to him straight away while the memory is still fresh enough that he can still almost feel the movements in his body.
It can make the difference between winning an Olympic gold medal and not winning an Olympic gold medal, because you're talking at the Olympics of such small amounts between first, second, third, fourth. You know, sometimes it's 0.01 of a second, so anything you can improve is going to help that.
And away we go.
At the Olympic Park, with the Games just a few weeks away, the British women's hockey team enjoy a 2-0 win over Argentina in a test event.
Alex Danson there gets absolutely clobbered by one of the Argentine players.
Then this happens, the moment any athlete dreads. Alex Danson injures her shoulder, and it looks serious. But is her injury all down to bad luck, or could her genes have played a role too?
Nice, good.
A few weeks later, and she's having physio.
Well, let's see if we go for 8, okay? We'll do between 8 and 10.
Her prospects for London look good, but by knowing about her genes, could she have avoided injury altogether? A London team has identified 2 genes with variants that can mean an athlete is more prone to stress fractures. So might genetics be the clue to elite performance?
If you look at any one sporting element, let's say, so for instance, how high you can jump as a child, quite a lot of that variation in a classroom will be down to genes. It can be as much as 80% of the variation in that sort of event. As you get more and more elite, you require an increasingly rare combination of genes. But quite clearly, if you didn't get to train, if you didn't get the right nutrition, you would never reach that potential.
Go from there, I'll bring the dumbbells over here.
At the English Institute of Sport, they spend millions making sure the latest in sports science and medicine reaches Olympic and Paralympic athletes. They're keen to make use of anything that science can teach them, including the latest in genetics.
Good.
We know some individuals seem to have a higher risk of certain types of injury, and if we can better understand the risk of injury for an individual athlete due to their genetics, so we can tailor their conditioning program to prevent injury, but also inform their medical program to actually manage and treat injury.
That's it, good. Let the hands come away a little bit if they want to. Good.
That research involved work with the military as well as athletes, but to some, the idea of testing for genes to help spot the perfect soldier or the perfect athlete is a chilling one.
I think there is a danger, not least because it isn't yet an exact science, and if we try and apply it in that way, we could be missing out on the possible champions. But perhaps more importantly, I think it raises some big ethical and social issues. And for many people, participation in sport is about fun, it's about healthy lifestyle, and the last thing we or anyone else should be doing is actually screening people into or out of particular sports based on genetic variations.
In the end, being the best is about so much more than data collection, fine-tuning and genetic testing.
Let's just imagine that you have screened all the males in the country at the age of 2. You've identified the next Beckham genotype. Does that person want to play, enjoy playing? Have they also developed got this cassette of genes that's going to lead them to discover alcohol and cigarettes at the age of 11 and stop training? None of these things are predictable.
If the winners emerge from the mass of people like you and me, perhaps that's the key. They're essentially the same as us, but different enough to set them apart. And after all, if they weren't, the rest of us would have nothing to aspire to.